The Birth of Venus. The Birth of Venus is a painting by the Renaissance painter Sandro Botticelli. It was one of the painter's most important works. It is executed in tempera on canvas and measures of 278.5 centimeters wide by 172.5 centimeters high. It is preserved in Florence, where it is exposed in a room called Botticelli. This painting was in its time a revolutionary work because it presented a nude not justified by any religious component. This work comes from a mythological of the Greco-Roman classical culture prior to Christianity, which meant the full acceptance of the new Renaissance humans away from the medieval time. His iconographic interpretation is related to the Florentine Platonic Academy, an intellectual circle sponsored by the Medici family, that developed both in the fields of philosophy and of literature and art. The meaning of the work is therefore related to Neoplatonism and the formulation by Marsilio Ficino of an idealized concept of love, where the figure of Venus unfolds into two complementary versions, the celestial Venus and the earthly Venus, which symbolize spiritual love and material love, a theory derived from Plato's Banquet. On the other way, the inspiration for the theme represented by Botticelli can be found in literary sources such as the classic works of Oviedo and especially Angelo Poliziano, a member of the Florentine Academy, that in his work Stains per la Giostra describes in verse the birth of Venus. It should be noted that his work was dedicated to lose the impossible love professed by the noble Giuliano de' Medici for the beautiful and virtuous Simonetta Vespucci, who was the model from the figure of Venus. Traditionally, it was believed that the commission of the painting has come from Lorenzo di Pierfrancesco de' Medici, cousin of Lorenzo the Magnificent, according to a comment made by the Renaissance historian Giorgio Vasari, but there is no documentary evidence of such fact, so it is unknown today the principle of the table as well as the exact date of this realization.
As we know, we have 10 persuasion theories that will allow us to explain from another point of view what the intention of the painter was. The 8th theory, based on a social influence, has to do with the way in which the person perceives themselves in relation to the influence, factors that links them to other people and to the society in general. The areas of social influence are compliance and obedience. We choose the work The Birth of Venus and related it to the 8th theory based on a social influence. We can analyze that the author wants to demonstrate in his work the nude as something that had no precedent and that will serve us as a reference for later works in this regard. By the time the 15th century Middle Ages, in which the painter did his work, it had a great social impact, generating a change in thought, since nudity was an eminently intimate subject that could not be exposed. This is why with the work we choose, we can interpret that it expresses in some way an expression of woman's freedom, with a voice of command and intelligence, because at the time the woman was relegated only to the home and to the raise of children. This painting was in this time a revolutionary work because it presents without strokes a nude not justified by any religious component, but an interest born of wisdom and knowledge. We observe how the female nude, beyond the representation of Eve, associated with sin, is becoming important again in art. The work The Birth of Venus had an influence in the social sphere, in art, morality, and religion, giving openness to a fair thought in the development of humanity. The corporal expression and its nakedness serve